you very much. Hello. Thanks very much. I'm Jonny Longdon. Just a very, very quick introduction. So, as you already know, I'm Digital Experience Director of Journey Further. Journey Further is a performance marketing agency, so we also do paid media and organic and brand and creative and stuff like that. I run the Digital Experience Division, which is predominantly conversion optimization, experimentation, whatever you want to call it, as Matt talked about. And I've been doing that for just over 15 years now. So I've run other agencies, I've been a management consultant, I've worked client side, I built an experimentation function at Sky, various things like that. Anyway, so what I'm going to talk to you about today, I've gone the wrong way, is about how to understand CRO from a financial perspective. Now, I could stand here and tell you that me and Matt worked together and made our presentations work really well together. That would be a total lie, but they do really kind of coincidentally. So this follows on really nicely from what Matt was saying. As Matt was saying, basically very few people actually really understand what anybody means when they say CRO or experimentation or any of the words that they use for it. And the real sort of knock-on effect of that is that nobody really properly understands how to buy it or how to incorporate it into their business or how to understand what it's supposed to do. And if you're internal and you're trying to persuade people to do it, at the end of the day, that's going to mean that somebody financial has to agree to it. So it kind of comes down to how you understand the finance. Now, as Matt mentioned, everybody has a completely different perception of what CRO is or what any of the words that you might use to refer to it mean. And even if you've never really thought of it, I can guarantee that you've got some kind of subconscious understanding of it based on things that you've probably heard. And I can't say that they're all wrong, but everybody's got a very twisted perception of it. So I wanted to just kind of take a step back and look at the history of it and what's led to some of the ways that people think of it, and then try and tear that up and talk about what it really is. So, like I say, I've been in this field for just over 15 years now. I first started working for a digital agency in something like about 2005, I think. And I worked for this agency that we mainly built people's websites for them. And back then, a lot of companies who had websites didn't have CMSs or anything like that. There wasn't really stuff like that around. You would have a website and it would be owned by your IT team. And when I say IT team, I mean literally the IT guys in the basement who you would get your laptop fixed by. And so you wanted to make a change to the website, you had to go and ask them, and they'd be like doing stuff with people's laptops as well as trying to figure all that out. And it was a nightmare and nobody could do anything. And then what happened in 2007 was that Google launched what was then called Google Website Optimizer, which up until recently was called Google Optimize, which has just been killed. But that was, I think, probably one of the first available, or at least widely available A/B testing platforms out there. And it allowed people to test things on their websites. However, the more interesting thing, than the thing that most people kind of leaped on, was that the fact that it allowed you to change things on the website without going and asking IT. So all of a sudden, people in marketing teams could change stuff. And the testing thing was a bit by the by in comparison to that, because it suddenly gave people control. And so a load of people jumped on that, and you would have marketing teams with somebody sitting in the corner doing testing, but actually, they're changing copy and stuff that people wanted changing. And so then CRO became this kind of hacky thing where, you'd have people in a marketing team. If you think about the meaning of the word hacking, it's somebody on the outside, doing stuff without authority, without actually having access to systems. And that's what it was. It was, people hacking into the website to do stuff and actually just trying to get a bit of commercial benefit out of it. And then consultants came and started doing that as well. So you go, consultant would come and say, I can install this tool on your website. and I'll do this stuff and it will make you more money and we don't need to bother your IT team. And a lot of the time they would sell on this kind of no-win, no-fee basis where they would say, don't pay me anything, but for the tests that win, I will take 1% of the revenue, of the annualized revenue of that thing. And so then that became this really sort of tactical thing that consultants sell. And meanwhile, all of that's going on, but the IT team still have this big roadmap of stuff that they're doing that other people have asked them to do. So they're redesigning stuff and going through waterfall development to do all this big stuff, while this hacky person over here just tweaks buttons and stuff like that. And then fast forward to the present day, you've got really Agile was invented. Companies, either had proper in-house engineering teams looking after their website, or they had development agencies, and it all kind of modernized and they took control over their website. But somebody forgot to tell CRO, so that just stayed completely separate. You've got Agile engineering team developing major things, doing site redesigns, redesigning a checkout, building new stuff, and still CRO sat over there hacking away at tweaking elements of UX and things like that. So that's led to right up to this point. When people think of CRO, all of their perception of it really comes from that kind of history. And most people, when they think of it, will think, for a start, CRO is A/B testing. That is what it is. It's a piece of software. And the software companies themselves haven't helped with that. They go around saying, this is all you need, buy this piece of software. And, that's when you're doing A/B testing. Great. And also that it's like this kind of hacking thing. It's tweaking things. It's, doing the least possible effort thing to make some money. And off the back of that, more importantly, it ends up being seen as a kind of a marketing channel. So, you do CRO, SEO, and PPC, and they've all got 3 letters. And so, that's kind of the same. What's your line budget item for those 3 things? And so, people have this perception of it based on that. And it's all really weird. Why do you think of it like that? So let's tear that up completely. Just forget absolutely everything you've ever known. And what really is it? So, I talk about this stuff all the time. And, I'm really, really passionate about it for one reason only, really, which is this. It's that really, really think about it. Nothing great that ever happened in the history of modern civilization did so without some sort of application of the scientific method. So space flight, medicine, all kinds of modern technology, everything that happened in the last sort of 200-300 years of any significance happened because of the scientific method, which came from the Age of Enlightenment, rational awakening, and all that kind of stuff. And what it is basically is just simply a process of using observation and data and iteration to develop things towards goals. And if you want to go to the moon, your goal is to get to the moon, and so then you're going to try and understand how to do that. What happens if you explode that thing, and can you lift something off the ground? Let's test it. No, it doesn't work. Okay, let's go back to the drawing board. That's what it is. But, nobody in business has ever gone, oh, we're trying to achieve this great thing with business. Let's learn from these guys over here who have actually achieved really great things. Nobody's ever done that. Instead, they go, I know exactly what's going on here. I've worked in this for years and I know what to do. So it's just really weird. Why would you not want to kind of learn from that world? And like I say, it all just comes down really to the fundamental attitude and approach, where that is the coat of arms of something called the Royal Society. The Royal Society is one of the oldest scientific institutions in the world, founded in the 1600s. And that bit of text at the bottom that says nullius in verba is Latin for take nobody's word for it. And that was the founding motto of the Royal Society, where they basically just sat down and said, we are not going to take dogma and authority and people's opinions and religion and all this kind of stuff for why we do things. Instead, we're going to use observation, and we're going to be skeptical, and we're going to use a process to go through it. And it's as simple as that. That's really, at the end of the day, if you want to use testing or experimentation or anything like that to try and further your business, then that's ultimately why. And exactly as Matt said, people get hung up on the idea of experimentation or CRO software or anything. Those are all just bits of it. If you went into a kind of a scientific research institute and you said, what do? They wouldn't say, I do experimentation. They would tell you what they were trying to achieve as a scientist. So that's really like when you strip it all back, that's what you're trying to do. And it's just ultimately about innovating and developing your business using rational methods other than, just guessing. So then the other way to look at that, when we take it back down to the level of sort of actual testing, is this stat. So this came from Harvard Business School about 2-3 years ago, and they teamed up with the platform Optimizely, which is an A/B testing tool. And they took all of the historical data of every test that had ever been run out of Optimizely in the history of its existence. And so there was like 22,000 different tests run by over 1,350 different websites. And they're looking at all sorts of different things to do with statistics and stuff like that. But the overarching thing that came out of it was that only 1 in 10 of those things was actually able to prove whatever it was trying to prove. So that's 22,000 things that people thought were a good idea and that seemed like a good plan. And only 1 in 10 of them actually was able to demonstrate any tangible benefit. So the other way to look at that is that 90% of what you do, whether it's just changing a bit of copy or changing or redesigning your entire website, 90% of that is potentially a complete waste of time because you are guessing, and we cannot guess. We cannot use our powers of guessing and opinion to try and work out what works. It's never worked, it never will. So what is my definition of CRO? Well, the way I describe it is it's basically, whatever you want to call it, it's ultimately decision science applied to the risk management of innovation and growth. That's really it. You are using a rational process to make better decisions about how to achieve whatever it is you want to achieve in your business. And the risk management part is that if you don't do it, you are putting yourself at a lot of risk of wasting a lot of money and doing stupid things. And that's kind of it, really. That's what you want to do. And you can do that without doing any experimentation. You can just, try things and try and get feedback about things rather than just guessing. That would do it to an extent. Experimentation is a quite advanced way of doing it, but you can still do that. So that should set the playing field of what I'm about to talk about. How do you understand the financial benefit of it? Now, we are talking about running digital experiments, running tests and things like that. So if I take, first of all, let's imagine that you have 10 things that you want to do to your website or whatever. They could be big things, they could be small things, but everybody who has a website will have a list of stuff that they want to do. Like, we need to redesign the checkout, or we need to build some landing pages or whatever. So you've got 10 things that you want to do to the website. And if you build all 10 of them, you will pay to build and deploy all 10 of those things. That's the line at the bottom. So you've paid £36,000 in dev costs to build and deploy those things. Now, without doing any testing, you have no idea of this, but guaranteed, some of them will work, some of them will have the opposite impact that you think they're going to have, and most of them won't do anything at all. That's the reality. And so in that picture, you might have got a little bit of benefit. You might get a little bit of incremental benefit in what you're doing. However, had you not done the things that don't work, you would have been in a better position. So when you put experimentation or testing into the picture, the first thing that happens is you're going to build all 10 of those things as tests. Now, this is the really important thing. It is cheaper and easier to build something as a test than it is to actually build it in production. That's the bit that gets missed. So everybody thinks of testing as, does this work or doesn't it? Great, that's what it does. But almost more importantly, it is cheaper. It's far more cheaper and efficient to build something as a test. Either just because it is, because the process that developers go through is cheaper and more efficient, but more importantly, because if you do it right, you should be breaking things down into the smallest possible thing that you can test. So, good example, let's put PayPal on the site. Well, either you could properly integrate PayPal, or you could literally just stick the PayPal button on and see whether people click it. Much cheaper. So if you're doing it right, you are going through a process of going, what is the smallest, cheapest thing that we can test in order to validate this point? So already you are just saving a ton of cost just by testing those 10 things rather than actually doing them. And then, of course, you're only going to deploy the things that work. So you're only going to get the benefit of the things that work and not the negative, detrimental impact of the things that don't work. So your ability to drive return on investment is exponential because you're spending less overall and making more money overall. And that is just the output of making good decisions. That's what you're doing. And people ask, well, how do we prove the ROI? Why do you need to prove the ROI of making better decisions? Who would not want to make better decisions? And the other bit that gets really, really easily forgotten is this, which is that all 10 of those things are the most valuable piece of research and development that you can buy. Even if something doesn't work, you have learned something very, very important about customer behavior. Every single test that you run is a binary thing where customers will behave one way or not about something that you put out, and you learn something very important about that, and you can use all that information. So even though things are technically failing, you're always learning from them. So summary of this is that, yes, testing is figuring out whether stuff works, but more importantly, there's a whole operational efficiency to what you spend on development, and you are learning, and that's intangible, really. The more nitty-gritty thing is, how do you treat it in a P&L? So if you're actually talking to financial people about whether or not to invest in this is where I often find it gets a bit messy. Now, this is the number one reason that CRO programs fail, because whoever is looking after the numbers and whoever's looking after the P&L does not understand where to put it in the P&L or how to treat the benefit of it. So let's look at a typical P&L for e-commerce. So this is, would be a typical website with some marketing going on. At the top, you've got revenue generating channels. So, you've got marketing like PPC, paid social, all this kind of stuff. And typically, you're going to want to see a return on monthly spend for these channels. So we are putting this amount of money into PPC per month. What are we getting back per month? So you're looking for those channels to drive regular ROI that can be tracked easily on the balance sheet. Then you've got the platform cost of the website. So website means hosting, means, an agency doing critical maintenance and things like that. And then you will have some budget for development and enhancing the website. Now, nobody ever really asks about the return on investment of that stuff. It is generally, seen to be a cost that needs to happen. If they do ask about the ROI, it will be a kind of an annual thing where someone will say, we're spending this on our website and it's roughly generating this amount of online sales. Does it feel about right from a ratio point of view? Nobody's saying what's the monthly ROI of the spend on the website. And really, everything that I've just said, everything that I've just talked about looks like this. The development spend. So if you're putting effort and money into developing content and assets or web development, UX or anything like that, then potentially 90% of that is a complete waste of money. So you're doing things that have absolutely no impact whatsoever because you're just guessing. And in most companies, people just sit around and go, I don't really like the website, so I don't like the checkout, let's change it. That's basically what happens. And it's all guesswork, it's nonsense, it won't work. So that's where you're wasting money. However, what happens with CRO is this, where it gets treated as a marketing channel. So you've got CRO, which sits alongside other things with 3 letters in them. And it's got some budget. So you're paying an agency or, you've got a CRO person whose salary is this, and then the cost of, an A/B testing platform. And then the business wants to see the monthly ROI of that thing. And so you've got people calculating individual tests and the outcome of those tests. And, this test is going to make this amount of money over these months. And so because you can do that, you physically can do that, That's what people want. And so they look at it like that, where they're going, what's the revenue benefit of running experiments? Now, the massive problem with that is that experimentation does not in and of itself generate any money at all. What you are doing is making better decisions about web development. So if I run a test and it wins, then I have to go and tell the web development team to spend money on putting that thing live on the website. So it's the web development and the realization of the thing that generates the money, not the experiment. The experiment is just a form of research. It's a form of understanding of the idea. So it's completely twisted. And this kind of view will never, ever come to any kind of fruition. At some point down the line, someone will go, I don't trust that these numbers are actually right. I don't trust that this is making this revenue, and we seem to be able to spend more on PPC and get more back. It will always happen. And it's because you've fundamentally misunderstood the financial aspect of it. So in reality, where should it sit? Well, actually, it's just a part of the cost of web development. And as I said, most of web development is a total waste of money anyway. So you don't necessarily even need to spend more. You can move budget from web development into experimentation, which is actually just a form of web development anyway. Done properly, it's a more efficient form of web development, so it is web development. So, you can just move that budget in there, and, if you've already got an existing team, whilst it's a little bit challenging, you can repurpose that team and have them do server-side experiments and things like that. But ultimately, it should sit there. And then, do you need to understand the ROI of it? Well, if you're not understanding the ROI of web development, why do you need to understand the ROI of better decision-making with web development? Why wouldn't you do that? So, how do you actually do it? Hopefully that all makes sense, but there's three key things, which are very high level, but how do you kind of go about it? So, how do you drive real value? Well, number one, research and experimentation has to be a really significant proportion of your budget for web development. Exactly like I said, whatever you're spending on content and web development, most of it's a waste of money. So, if you knew which 90% of it was a waste, you could stop doing it, but you don't. And that's because you can't guess. It'd be really easy for me to go around saying to people, I've done this for 15 years, I know exactly what's going to work on your website. I have absolutely no idea whatsoever, because every single day, things that I think are completely obvious will have totally the opposite effect. And that's the fact of life. You just can't guess. So, you could pretty much stop spending anything unless you're going to do something else. So move that into actually understanding what customers want, actually having a strategy behind what you're trying to develop and how you're trying to grow your business, and doing validation testing of some description in order to figure out what works. And guaranteed, if you're not doing it already, the very first thing you'll learn is that all your ideas are rubbish, because that's what everybody learns. Number two, invest in skill and expertise before software and tech. A/B testing tools are a commodity. They all work in pretty much the same way. There's absolutely no reason whatsoever you should spend a lot of money on one. A complete waste of money. But exactly as I was talking about at the beginning, it's the wider process that goes with it that's far more important. It's not just about a piece of software. You need basically somebody who understands how to run the end-to-end process of running research and coming up with ideas and prioritizing and workflowing those ideas and running tests. And also, there are real nuanced things like sometimes you can't always run a controlled experiment. So what else do you do? What do you do when there's like low volumes and things like that? And if you get somebody in your marketing team who once ran an A/B test 4 years ago to try and run the show, and pay 100 grand for Optimizely, you're not really going to get very far. So, however you do it, whether it's through external people or by hiring really good internal people, you have to get really good skills involved. And the third thing is, exactly as I said there, focus on the entire process. If I go back to that slide about science and spaceflight and things like that, really it's where you're trying to get to is just that kind of skeptical view of, saying, we think this is the right thing to do. We don't know. So how can we test it? And the really, really important thing is that you can do that with anything. You know, the fact that A/B testing tools exist have clouded people into thinking that the only place you should ever experiment is on a website because that's what A/B testing tools do. You can do it anywhere. Like, you know, if you think, you know, maybe I should launch into France, or maybe we should get rid of this whole product line, or maybe we should try and shift the demographic of our audience. Anything, like, you know, you can use the same approach of just thinking, that's not necessarily right. How do we use some sort of evidence-based approach and some sort of validation to try and figure out whether we're right in the cheapest way possible, because we might be wrong. And it's that whole sort of attitude and process that goes around it is far more important than anything technical about an A/B testing tool. So focus on that and focus on the culture that surrounds it rather than anything else. There we go. Thank you.